Number 10. Archduke Franz Ferdinand's Phaeton. If you don't know who the Archduke Franz Ferdinand is, then you should probably play more World War I shooters. It was his assassination that started World War I, and his assassination took place in this car. It wasn't just that he was assassinated in the car, but that he avoided an assassination attempt earlier that day. He was on his way to the hospital to comfort the people who were harmed in the crossfire. On his way there, one of the assassins had stopped in a cafe to get something to eat, saw the Archduke passing by, and well, started World War I. Not only that, but the car was involved in 6 accidents and 13 deaths. Some people would die only months after owning the car. Number 9. John F. Kennedy's limousine SS-100. The whole world was stunned on the morning of November 22nd, 1963 as John F. Kennedy was assassinated on television. Something super strange about this navy blue Lincoln, it was upgraded with almost $200,000 worth of features, none of which were making it bulletproof or putting some sort of protective cover over top of it. However, after Kennedy was killed, the limo was kept in service, because you can't really blame a car for that. It was given all sorts of protective measures like titanium plating and bullet resistant glass. I guess hindsight is 2020. Number 8. Ghost crash. On December 11th, 2002, police started getting phone call after phone call about a set of headlights running off of Britain's A3 highway. Crashes on the highway aren't unusual, but people stopping to find the car couldn't see it anywhere. So police went to go investigate. They found no recent crashes, but a Vauxhall Astra that had been covered in vegetation. It seemed the car had been there for at least 5 months. So whose headlights were people seeing drive into the ditch? My guess is it was a ghost who was like so tired of being stuck on the side of the highway and wanted to go to the funeral home so he could party with other ghosts. Number 7. Ghost bus. It was a foggy night in London, 1934. A man driving normally when suddenly he swerved off as if he was trying to avoid something, hit, crashed into a wall, and was killed instantly. Witnesses say there was nothing in his way to make him swerve like that. But legend talks of a ghost bus that roams the roads. It'll appear out of nowhere, look like it's going to crash right into you. It's said to be a big red double-decker bus that'll appear around 1:15 in the morning. People who've seen it say the bus will be coming right after you, and after it passes, if you check your rear view mirror, there'll be nothing there. It could be a real ghost bus or just another reason not to do. Number 6. The Black Volga. During the 1960s and 70s throughout Russia and Eastern Europe, people were terrorized by the myth of the Black Volga. The Volga limo was the most expensive car in Russia at the time, and they were specifically designed to hide the identity of the person inside the car. They had tinted windows, and if that wasn't enough, you could do that whole movie trope when you see someone creeping in your window from a distance like Because the car had such a secretive tone and was priced so high, rumors started speculating about who would be driving one. People would say it would be priests or politicians, other people said it was the devil himself. Conspiracy theories got so far that they say they saw kids get pulled into them, and if you touched one, you would die within 24 hours. None of these myths have ever been proven, so this might be a game of telephone that got out of hand. Number 5. Renault Magne. It's 2004 in Cape Town, South Africa, and you hear a roaring sound come from outside your window. You pop out to see what's going on, and you see a jumping car. Apparently 9 people saw a car start up on its own and start jumping backwards until it crashed into a fence. So they called the guys from Top Gear to have a look. No, they called the police. When the police arrived, they didn't believe anyone at all. They probably thought everybody was high. Then the car started up on its own again and started jumping backwards into a tree. Upon further inspection, it seemed the car had a rusty starter cable, which might have been the cause of the startup, but what was making it jump? Number 4. Bonnie and Clyde's Ford Deluxe. The original ride or die couple. Imagine meeting the one. I mean the one. Like they're so much into your stuff and you that the two of you team up and go around America during the Great Depression, robbing banks, killing cops, and looking on point while you do it. Bonnie and Clyde were 2 of America's most notorious criminals and somehow managed to keep a healthy relationship going while they were on the most wanted list. The two traveled around in a stolen 1934 Ford Deluxe, and on May 23rd, 1934, it would be their final resting place. They were ambushed by cops and shot more than 100 times in that bad boy. Now what happened to the car? Well, in a way, nothing. The car was kept exactly as it was the way Bonnie and Clyde died in. Every last bullet hole. You can go see the car now at Whiskey Pete's Hotel and Casino in Nevada. The reason it's on our cursed car list is because people who take pictures in front of the car say that they can see figures floating in the background. It's not just because two people got turned into Swiss cheese in the back seat. Number 3, the Le Mans disaster. Now this curse isn't an ongoing horror that torments people for 100 years like the Chicago Cubs goat curse, but it was a massive disaster, one of the worst car wrecks the world of racing has ever seen. In 1955, driver Lance Macklin was taking his turn out of the pits and back onto the tracks. He was driving an Austin Healey 100. I'm picturing him rolling out on the racetrack in like a pair of motorized Healeys. Mike Hawthorne was coming in hot, driving a Jaguar D-Type and barely missed Macklin. Macklin swerved to try to steady himself and ended up in the left lane. He doesn't see Pierre Levay flying in behind him at 150 miles per hour. Pierre hits the back of Macklin's sick Healey and goes flying into the crowd, killing 81 people and injuring 120. You don't have to worry about that happening today if you go out to car races. At NASCAR they got those nice nets so you can eat liquid cheese and get a neck sunburn without dying. Number 2, James Dean's 550 Spyder. What's a good way to be considered cursed? Kill one of the most beloved actors of an era. James Dean was an American heartthrob and badass who died tragically at age 24 in a car wreck. This bad luck racer was named Little Bastard. If you're gonna ride in something every day, maybe give it a nicer name. But it wasn't just James Dean that this car tormented. After his death, the car was purchased and brought to a shop for repairs. Then it slid off the lift and broke a mechanic's leg. After this, parts of the car were installed in 2 different cars. One driver died, one driver was seriously injured. Some people tried to steal the car once and they were both injured. The car doesn't even like thieves, it's on no one's side. The car eventually mysteriously disappeared while being transported. I'm sure it was stolen. The car that killed James Dean is probably worth millions and might have his sexy ghost inside it. And number 1 on our list is the 1964 Dodge 330. This car has been named the most evil car in America. More evil than the PT Cruiser or that man-eating Zamboni that I just made up. This car actually has a pretty wild story. It was originally a police cruiser and all 3 officers that were issued the car eventually committed suicide after killing their families. A car can't be evil, this has to be a coincidence for sure. After it served time as a cop car, it was sold to an old man. Nothing happened to him, but several people who vandalized the car, it didn't end well for them. One of them was killed by an 18-wheeler, several more were decapitated, and 4 of them were struck by lightning. Dude, when I die, I want to come back as an evil car so I can summon lightning. The car was later destroyed and the pieces were scattered so it could no longer summon God's wrath. But apparently someone bought all the pieces and reassembled the beast. Part of me wants someone to give this motorized murderer a self-driving upgrade just to see what happens. Usually when people think of hellish vehicles with dark spirits living inside them, they don't really think about a Prius. I would never have guessed that one of the most attractive things about someone walking around in the afterlife is good mileage. But in this video we can see something pretty freaky.
Officially confused and a little freaked out. The windows are up. There's no air coming in, and even if there—
For whatever reason, this guy's rear view mirror decoration just keeps spinning in the window. All the windows are up, the car is off, there's completely no air going through the car. It's very strange. Maybe it's like a ghost cat or something just playing around with it non-stop. Number 9, the Irish ghost car. The Irish ghost car sounds more like a wrestling move or a boozy drink that's so powerful it makes you feel like you're in a moving vehicle. But it's actually an unexplained spectral vehicle that was terrorizing some villages in Ireland back in 1920. It was spotted mainly in the villages Athleague and Mount Talbot. People who saw it said that it could move at speeds way faster than any vehicle on the road. It also could phase through anything like other cars, buildings, hills. It seemed to have a supernatural ability to move through objects. A few people who got a look at the car said that there was no one driving it but a bunch of people inside with white robes on. They couldn't tell who the people were, but they did look humanoid. Now an elderly couple who saw the ghost car actually died from fright, which I think is like 1920s talk for a heart attack. Being a doctor back then would have been so easy. You're just slacking around. If someone died, you could be like, oh yeah, it was just the spooky thing that killed you. Number 8, the Kent Road Wraith. In the 1950s, there was a road in England which had a ghostly motorist disturbing everyone who dared to come along its path. It was Kent Road in southern England, where drivers reported seeing a black car that had an older make but would move like something more modern. Some people even said that the car moved like something that they've never seen before, like it came from the future. Most reports stated that people who looked into the car saw no one driving it, but a few claimed to have seen some sort of ghostly figure behind the wheel, like some sort of wraith. One police report came from a man who saw this car parked on the side of the road. He pulled over to see if the driver was okay, but there wasn't a man inside, but this fog-like wraith figure. He tried to shake the car, but the figure didn't move. We all know that you need a silver-plated sword if you want to get a wraith's attention. That's common knowledge. Number 7. The vanishing Land Rover. We're staying in England and we're moving over to the town of Cotsworth, England. It's always small tucked away places that have to deal with things like UFOs and cursed cars. You leave the city for a little peace and quiet, and next thing you know you're knee deep in some supernatural turds. I guess that's the trade-off. In the country, you have demonic vehicles. In the city, you just have demonic people. This vanishing Land Rover was spotted in 1965 by a man who was just minding his own business, driving down the road, hurting no one, when a Land Rover rushed in front of him. The strangest thing about this car, it wasn't the terrible drivers or the erratic behavior, but the headlights were off. Instead, a ring of light was coming from the top of the car, and then out of nowhere, it disappeared. Number 6. Rose on Red. Now we're going to jump over to St. Petersburg, Russia, where Tatiana Shevchenko encountered a demonic red car with rose-tinted windows. She had just gone off work and she was walking home when a mysterious rose on red car pulled up next to her. A man dressed in all black offered her a ride, and she said yes. I guess sometimes you have such a long day at work that you would risk dying just so you don't have to walk home. When she got inside, the interior wasn't that of a car's but a brightly lit room. She said there were 2 humanoid figures inside who introduced her to a tall man who called himself the Cardinal. She then passed out and then woke up standing where she was picked up, and no time had passed. Was this just a fever dream, or should we all be on the lookout for the rose on red car? Number 5. Triplets. This next one was reported in Vitalajärvi, Kankaanpää, Finland in 1993. A man was driving down a road in the middle of the night when an extremely bright light came up in his rearview mirror. It was so bright it was almost blinding. It was another driver with some high beams from hell, so he tried to speed up to make a little bit of distance between him and the other driver, but the car was moving so fast that it zoomed right past him. While the car passed him, he looked inside and saw 3 beautiful women, all with pale skin and silky white hair. This doesn't sound very cursed. Well, not until a few minutes later when he saw the headlights barreling towards him. They seemed to come out of nowhere. They were coming in so fast, and it was so out of nowhere that he couldn't get out of the way. He then braced for impact, and the last second the car vanished. And the beautiful ladies. Number 4. Ghost Tractor. You finally learned to use your ghostly powers for possession, and now what's the first thing you jump into? A tractor? I think I would at least try to get my hands on a Subaru or something with a little better handling. Well, this video shows what I'm assuming is the ghost of John Deere taking control of a tractor. I don't even know if John Deere's dead or if it's a real person. The tractor starts on its own and then starts driving around the farm.
As if possessed, the tractor suddenly makes a right-hand turn and begins motoring down the driveway. The tractor makes its way across the farm before attempting to drive straight up a tree.
You can see it taking turns. It does seem like someone's controlling the wheel. Thankfully, the tractor works its way onto a tree and then gets stuck. If I was working on that farm and I saw this video, I would just hang up my overalls and do something way less dangerous, like backyard wrestling. Number 3. Ghost Ride the Whip. Back in 2008, many of us thought that spinning rims and gold grills would bring us happiness. Turns out, you actually have to do a lot of work on yourself to achieve that. Who knew? Some of you remember Ghost Riding the Whip, where you would jump on top of a car as it was moving because it was really cool. Well, it seems that this trend has followed into the afterlife. There you can see terrifying footage of what looks like a ghost hovering on the roof of a car while it drives by. I wonder if that means he can use the carpool lane. I don't know why a ghostly figure is hovering above this car. Maybe the spirit is attached to something on the highway or the car itself, or maybe it's just some fancy editing. Number 2. Self-starting car. I feel like we should get to the self-driving part before we get cars to do the self-starting part on their own. This one is super eerie. It shows security footage of a car starting on its own and then it just starts driving. You can see through the window that there's no one driving the car, and you can tell that this isn't just a parking brake situation because the car lunges forward. The car doesn't make it very far because it ends up being stopped by something off camera. So do you think this is a ghostly driver trying to make an escape? Or do you think it's just a faulty spark plug? I don't know. Number 1. Driverless car. This one is so freaky. Back somewhere in the early 2000s, CCTV footage caught a driverless car pull up on a security point. The car stops at the gate and the security guard in the booth notices that there's no one driving the car, but in super creepy cruiser fashion, you can see the steering wheel moving from side to side. He steps out to check what's going on, and then a ghostly figure that looks like the girl from The Ring crawls on top of the car. If you don't believe me, here's a video. You can see the reaction of the security guard. He probably pooped his pants real good. Now this might have been some twisted prank, but I don't know if someone would drop the money on a self-driving Tesla just to prank a few people. Especially not prank a few security guards, they got it hard as it is. At number 10 we have the Jaguar XJ220. This is a beast of automotive engineering. It's absolutely beautiful. This thing looks like a car that you could race James Bond in and destroy him while stealing his girls and making sure that the bad guys win the day. I'm not a car guy, but you can't argue that this car isn't sexy. It's so sexy. It's sexy like ScarJo with red hair packed into a tight leather one piece trying to save the world. If you were lucky enough to ever get your hands on one of these bad boys, it would be the last thing you would want to lose. Well, one of these was found abandoned in a desert in Qatar. Someone snagged a picture of the car and car junkies started to lose their mind over the mystery of how such a beautiful piece of art ended up a pile of junk covered in sand. One explanation is some rich guy bought it and they didn't want it, so he just left it in a desert. But there was only 281 models of this car, so even if you're a rich punk who's terrible at recycling, you would still want to hold on to this thing just for your collection. And on top of that, it only had 1,000 kilometers on it. It seems like the car almost walked away on its own to live a life of solitude in the desert, just like Car Jesus. At number 9 we have the 1933 Plymouth Roadster. This car is an old school gem. It's kind of like the 70-year-old dude at the family get-together who has crazy stories of partying with Mick Jagger and doing body shots off Madonna. This Plymouth Roadster is sleek as hell. Just looking at it makes me want to drag race with some dudes with greased hair and then go get a milkshake at Pop's Diner. Well, it would make me want to do that if I wasn't black. I would rather not travel back in time to the 30s, thank you very much. But even though this car is fire, one of them, along with 10 other rare cars, was found in the basement of a house during a demolition. David Mount was doing a demo job in North Carolina and dug up a treasure chest of classic cars. On top of the 11 cars he found tucked away in the basement, there were even more buried around the property. The owner of the property just let David have them. Why would this guy give away all these classic cars? Well, I don't have the answers. This is a mystery list. Come on, guys. At number 8 we have Rolls-Royce Centurion. You know this car, you love this car, and if you don't know it, you're kind of a pleb. This car is meant to symbolize the peak of luxury. This is like getting a massage from the world's greatest physiotherapist while someone feeds you caviar. It's a car that says, I don't know how to drive because I get driven everywhere, and then I laugh while drinking champagne. So why was one of these cars found next to some railroad tracks in Russia? A picture of an abandoned Centurion was flying through the interweb and people started freaking out. And it's rightly so, because this car will run you $350,000. And it wasn't long after this car was spotted that it disappeared from the railroad tracks. So who owned it previously and where did it end up? Who came through and scooped it? These are the mysteries I come to bring you guys. At number 7 we have Russian construction vehicles. If you were to venture through the forests of Russia or Siberia, then you might come across what looks like a vehicle graveyard. After the fall of the Soviet Union, mass production of cars and other vehicles was halted. No one had any money to buy cars, so there was no need to make cars. The Russian government took charge of clearing them all out and piled them in massive junkyards. It's a mysterious sight, seeing miles upon miles of broken down cars. Why were each one of these cars left behind? Maybe some of them never had owners, or maybe some of them were stolen from other people and then sold so you could have a little bit of scratch to get by in the oppression. At number 6, we have a Maybach. If you're working security at a parking garage, you should keep your eyes open for some cars that have been left behind because you might be sitting on a gold mine. A picture in 2012 of a Maybach started a frenzy. This car was sitting in a parking garage in France, covered in dust, and it hadn't been moved for months. This Maybach would run you around 400,000 euros, and it kicks off with 550 horsepower. The mystery was never solved as to why this car was left, but a lot of people believe that maybe the owner was arrested or maybe even killed. At number 5, we have a 1929 racing Bentley. I know this thing is fast, but I wouldn't let it get away from me. I hate myself for that joke. Back in 2011, a group of explorers were checking out some old abandoned homes in Surrey, England. I think they expected to find rats and black mold, but what they came across was something a lot more valuable than a lung infection. They found an old as hell racing Bentley tucked away in a barn. These cars were previously used to win the Le Mans races, and the car that they found was in extremely good condition. It's thought that the owner of the car may have died or the car was stolen, and the price tag on this thing is around $400,000. Kind of where all these cars are sitting right now. At number 4, we have the Aston Martin DB4. Yeah, this is the car that James Bond drives in all the movies. Although it didn't come with machine guns under the headlights. I think that's something you need to install on your own. But back in the 70s, an American entrepreneur got his hands on one of these bad boys and parked it outside his house, and then it never moved again. Eventually someone discovered the car and was able to identify that no one was there to take care of it. The thing that really blows my mind about this find is, where did this guy go? Was he left behind or did the car leave him? And the car was run down, rusted, it could not be driven. Like, the thing was literally falling apart, and it was still worth over $300,000. A broken down car that can't be driven. It can't do the one thing that cars are supposed to do, and it's worth more than me and all my friends. At number 3, we have a Ferrari F50. It was only a matter of time before we made our way to a Ferrari. They're one of the most famous cars in the world, and they also make clothing for guys who think chin straps are fashionable. This Ferrari was found in the Ibadan desert in Nigeria, beaten to hell, and these cars aren't easily replaced. There are only 349 in the wild, and they are considered a collector's dream. Anyone who wants to have an exclusive car collection wants one of these in their lineup. These cars are so rare that if anyone tries to sell one from their collection, it can run as high as $2 million. That's $2 million for a used car. A used car that moves so fast it's not even good for driving on anything other than a racetrack. I wonder what it's like to spend $2 million on something just so you can look at it. Must be nice. At number 2, we have the Lamborghini Mera S. This is one of the classic Lambos. When you picture an old school race car, this is the vehicle that comes to mind. One of these iconic roadsters was bought for a man known as the Greek Elvis. He's like regular Elvis but has a lot more body hair and smells like feta cheese. This guy loved his exclusive car but drove it a little too hard and then had to take it in for repairs. He took it to the Hilton in Athens, parked it in a basement, got in a disagreement with the people at Lamborghini, and then left the car there. This was back in 1969, and the car stayed there for 30 years. Eventually someone took it, fixed it up, and then sold it at auction for almost $500,000. And for our number 1 spot, we have a Ferrari 459 GT. Alright guys, for this last one we have the most mysterious story I could find. So this mysterious car has all the pieces of the other car stories on this list. It has a big price tag, it was a pretty exclusive car, and it was found in the middle of nowhere. This one being in the back streets of Japan. What separates this one from the rest is a few key details. The car was found with someone's belongings inside of it, as if the person left the car in a hurry, or as if the car left him behind, like the title implies from this video. Also, the car was a custom job. It had a custom gear shift and custom spokes. Why would someone go to so much effort to have this car specifically made just to leave it out to break down and rust away? And lastly, they ran the license plates, but they couldn't connect it to any person. Who owned this car?